November 18th, 2020. This is our school committee meeting, and I'll start by reading our vision statement. The Ashland Public Schools cultivate the academic and social emotional growth of each student through a supportive, collaborative, innovative, and challenging environment. Students will develop into self-motivated, resilient, lifelong learners who embrace their role as responsible contributors to a global community. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV, and our order of business this evening is our call to order, our opening procedures, agenda review and adoption. We'll have time for public comment. Our administrative items include our superintendent update, COVID-19, update on winter sports, parent faculty hybrid survey, the superintendent's goals for 2020 to 2021, MASC delegate assembly, approval of school calendar 2021-2022, warrant approvals. The consent actions include the minutes of October 23rd, 2020, October 28th, 2020, October 30th, 2020, acceptance of gifts and donations, the committee reports of activities. Excuse me. God bless me.
Bless you.
God bless you.
Committee reports of activities, assistant superintendent update, member updates, action items, and then we will adjourn. So if you could tell me that you're present, we'll do roll call, and that you're okay with the order of business this evening. Kathy Bates.
Here and yes.
Erin Williams.
Hearing yes.
Paul Kendall.
Here and yes.
Mark Terry.
Here and yes.
Excellent, thank you. And then I will ask if there's anybody here from the public that would like to offer some comment. Now is the time. And seeing none, I will turn it over to you, Jim, for your update on COVID-19 to start.
Great, thank you. Just for simplicity's sakes, I will say that at the Friday school committee meeting, we had two new policies that were passed on travel with regard to staff and students. That information was shared today. Actually, it was shared last Friday with the public, and also shared again today with a link to the process and procedures that we're asking families, students to follow with regard to if there's any travel. And there's a form to fill out. That form gets populated into a spreadsheet for our administrative team, nurses, et cetera, where we can track and determine how, if a family member or student or a traveler is 14-day quarantined or a PCR test after 5 days, and then there's an attestation form, a confirmation form that they need to fill out and return to the nurse as well. So actually today it was interesting because I sent it out as a link. The principals will send it out as well, and I will repeat it on Friday with my email to the community. And we've already had a number of people fill it out. So it seems to be working well. There certainly are questions with regard to a couple things. And really my only update on this component would be that the intent of the policy was that every student, every traveler who enters into our buildings would be tested should they leave and enter into a high-risk area. So that includes anyone under 10 years old in our school system. Just like we did with masks, where we required all students in our district to wear masks, even though the Department of Ed didn't as part of their guidelines, nor has the DPH, and under the executive order said that students or children under 10 had to be tested. We are asking for that test to be done in order to allow students back in after the 5 days of testing. So tonight there was a change in close contact quarantining. I don't know if anyone saw that from the Department of Public Health, where they're now saying instead of 14-day quarantine, you can be quarantined for 10 days if you take a test after a PCR test after 8 days and test negative with 0 symptoms. So the department, the Board of Health, Ed Berman, myself, Audrey, and all of the school-based nurses are looking into that and finding, trying to see if we have to adjust our protocols or if we're going to stay consistent with 14 days. There's certainly is data that show that symptoms may not present themselves up until day 12, 13, 14. So we just want to be careful in however we approach it. So that just barely came out tonight. Other than that, Friday morning, we will have our meeting and look at the cases and see where we stand as a community. But what I said last Friday was we will certainly look at the data daily, and we have. And I'm not recommending any changes to our Thanksgiving schedule after, the week after Thanksgiving, et cetera. So that's all I have for COVID right now. I'm not going to say anything about our cases this week at this point. So I want to be, I don't want to jinx anything. So that's about that. So.
Can I ask one question, Jim?
Sure.
Posed to me by somebody who had read the policies and was questioning whether we were doing anything or trying to do anything about scenarios where our students and families aren't traveling, but somebody is coming into the home from elsewhere. Family comes in from New York to visit. Are we trying to do anything in terms of identifying those circumstances at all?
Yeah, you know what? I actually had that question. Someone emailed me that question, that very same question, and we didn't identify that within the policy.
Right.
But what I would hope is that, again, if someone's coming into the state, they're following the executive order, that they should be quarantining or have a negative test before they come in. Yeah, again, the whole system is an honor-based system, right? I mean, no matter what we do, it's an honor-based system with our faculty, staff, as well as our families, hoping that they do the right thing. And if they feel that they need to report it, then we will monitor it and work through Ed and Audrey and the school-based nurses to offer advice to those families.
Maybe it'd just be worth some sort of brief mention of that on your Friday communication about expectations in that regard, because that I don't think it would be appropriate for us to try to create that policy. I mean, now we're really talking about policies for people coming in from out of state, and we might as well just try to legislate everything. And I don't think I would have gone there, but that's not to say it's not a valid concern. And it doesn't present a risk to the community. So maybe just worth something worth noting when you communicate out the rest of the information again on Friday.
Yep, will do. And we've had a variety of scenarios that I think whenever you write policy, we've had scenarios where, what if I leave and my kid stays home? And how does that impact when I come back? And so, again, those are all conversations that we will continue to have with our health professionals.
Thanks, Jim. Is that it until Friday?
Yeah, that was it. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And then Stephen, winter sports update, please.
Sure. I wish I had more information for everybody, but as of now, the MIAA is still deliberating. They're going to meet Friday morning. The board of directors will be presented with a plan for the winter season. So hopefully that gets sent out either Friday afternoon or Saturday morning. And then the following week, the TVL athletic directors will get together and come up with a plan. So I anticipate by early next week having more information for everybody.
Thank you. And the parent faculty hybrid survey, Jim.
Yeah, so I'm going to, in a moment, turn this over to Mr. Kyra and let him actually do the presentation tonight. As this relates to instruction, and I think it was important. He's been disaggregating the data. I want to qualify this by saying that while this data, as we've looked at it, recognize there's some flaws within it, and that we need to dig a little more deeply into building-based data. So we'll be sharing this out with our principals to have them dive more deeply into individual responses as it relates to, especially Wednesdays, the synchronous and asynchronous component of Wednesdays. And that will happen over the next week or two because of the Thanksgiving break. But we certainly, as we started looking at the data, said, well, there's some things here that we're not sure about. and that we need a little more investigating. So this is really an overview and a highlight of where the information is as of today through that first quarter of the year. So remember, high school and middle school just started on Monday, their second quarter of the year. So they're in new classes now. And this data, will be repeated and cleaned up for the second quarter. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it to you, and I think you can share your screen if you want to show the information.
Sure. Just bear with me here while I pull it up. Everybody can see that? Okay? Is that working right? Thumbs up, someone? No?
Yeah,
Great.
that's good.
Okay, so thank you, Jim, for leading in with the fact that we certainly have much to learn, I think, to go further into this data. But for a quick overview, what we do is we do surveys that one for families, parents, and teachers. Primarily filled out by teachers who are core subject teachers as well as specialists. And it was only for parents who have students that are participating in the hybrid model. I've included the questions that we asked on this slide, but we have another slide later on that shows the questions a little bit larger, so I can move towards that in a bit. In terms of who responded, it was sort of typical participation in terms of participation. 100 folks at 150 37 at the middle school and 161 at Ashland High School. Obviously, we would have loved for more people to respond, but we do feel like we have a pretty good baseline of information from the folks who did take the time to complete the survey. In terms of our teachers, again, I've split up so you can see how many specialists teachers at school filled out the survey. It was again.
Hey, Mike, sorry, am I the only one that Mike's breaking up a bunch? Is anybody else getting that, or?
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
told,
me too.
I just told him to stay in one spot. I just sent him a text.
So
Okay.
maybe turn off your video, Mike, because it could just be that because it started when you started presenting. So maybe just shut off your video
And actually, if all of us could mute ourselves, that helps as well.
Okay.
So hopefully this will be better.
It is.
Okay, you just have to pull up my notes back up here. In terms of the teacher responses, again, between specialists and teachers, just so you can see who participated in the survey. So some things to note, though, before we get into the data. In particular, different schedules at different schools and the different schedules of the different teachers are certainly going to impact how they answer questions. And for instance, elementary teachers potentially report that they provide more work to students because they're not focusing in on one particular course. So they'll talk about presenting work for a student throughout the course of the entire day, where a middle school teacher may have answered based on their one particular course. So I think there are some things that we need to think about in discrepancies that are potentially created by the way we ask the questions. So when we dig as we move forward, we may have to ask a few different questions, particularly around high school teachers and middle school teachers, to ensure we're getting the most accurate data possible. And parents as well. So parents were not filling things out based on courses, but rather based on what they do throughout the entirety of the day. And hopefully I'll be able to add some more detail to exactly what I'm talking about as we move forward here. The time on learning survey questions that we asked, we asked on average, how much time does your child spend receiving synchronous instruction on Wednesdays? The only time our kids are receiving live instruction is Wednesday. So we wanted to see how much time the child was receiving the remote instruction. On average, how much time does your child spend on asynchronous instruction activities on Wednesdays? And the same for how much time are they spending on asynchronous instruction during their at-home learning days. That would for that if a student was they're in school on Monday and Tuesday, but they're at home on Thursday and Friday.
Hey, Mike, before
Yes.
you move on, I'm going to ask everyone to see if you're still choppy at times. And I don't know, I know sometimes we've changed, making sure that everyone shuts their video off as well. I don't know if that'll help.
I apologize. I'm not sure what
You're
else.
perfect right there, but
Yeah, I'm right on top of my computer right now, so I can I'll continue like this if this works.
Yeah, if it keeps up, Mike, I can try sharing the presentation and move, because it started when you started sharing your screen. So
Okay. Again, we just shared the questions with you. So to make the pie chart as easy as possible, we tried to be consistent. So you'll notice that when folks are answering questions, less than 1 hour is green, 1 to 2 hours is red, so on and so forth. You can certainly read this yourselves. So in terms of school, you can see that in terms of parents, synchronous Wednesday instruction. So this is the live remote instruction that happens on Wednesday. 62.5% of our parents said that their students were getting between 2 and 3 hours of synchronous instruction. This is really where we expect folks to be at the elementary level. We expect them to have 2 to 3 hours of synchronous instruction for the Warren School. Now, the teachers, 48% of them said 2 to 3 hours is what they were providing. I think it's important to note, again, that some of the folks that answered this survey were specialists. So those folks would potentially be answering less than 1 hour. Also, a teacher might have answered only 1 to 2 hours because they may have maybe one of our counselors or someone that's performing social studies and science, and those lessons are a little bit shorter. So to me, the information matches up pretty well, and it's good to see that the parents, for the most part, 62%, are saying that their children are receiving 2 to 3 hours of synchronous instruction on Wednesdays. In terms of the Wednesday asynchronous time, again, we have to really make sure we're thinking about who's filling out the data and how they're filling it out. But the fact that our parents are saying that the children, for the most part, are getting 1 to 2 additional hours is exactly where we want to be. If we're getting 2 to 3 hours, 1 to 2 additional pieces of asynchronous instruction, that looks good to me. 45% are getting that. So that pretty much matches up what the teachers are saying, that they're giving 54% of our staff is giving 1 to 2 additional hours on top of the asynchronous piece. So that means a child would essentially, be getting about anywhere between 3 to 5 hours of instruction on those Wednesdays. We particularly want to pay attention to the fact that we don't think that a student should be spending all day on a screen at that age level. So in terms of the at-home days, again, these are the days when students are at home for Thursday and Friday if they're in cohort A, or Monday and Tuesday if they are cohort B. We should see more time here for asynchronous instruction. Teachers are saying that they're given about 3 to 4 hours. 43% of teachers are saying they're presenting 3 to 4 hours worth of instruction time. The only folks who are saying less than 1 hour, those were specialists. That 13% was completely specialists who were saying they were given less than an hour. That makes sense, as those courses are only 40 minutes. So from the 2 to 3 hours, that's 26%, and the 3 to 4 hours, that's 43.5%. That's right about where we want to be. Obviously, we've got an anomaly with the 4 to 5 hours. I think we have to look at that, is that is not an expectation. But it's clearly someone who has been giving plenty of work, and it's represented in the parent response that some students are receiving 4 to 5 hours worth of work. For all of the schools, And for all students, I think it's also really important for us to acknowledge the fact that all students learn differently. And what may take one student an hour to finish could take another student 3 hours to finish. And we did not necessarily ask those questions. We did not ask about special education. We did not ask about particular needs, student speed, student, if parents are seeing that their students are attaining, are keeping a good engagement and attention during their asynchronous time. We asked teachers that question, but we didn't ask parents. So are these 3 to 4 hours and 4 to 5 hours solid work? We're not really sure. But we're pleased to note that for the most part, our Warren School students are receiving anywhere between 2 to 4 hours of asynchronous work during those at-home days from the classroom teachers. Moving on to Mindess. One of the key pieces of data here that I was able to find out is that the specialist answered a little inconsistently in terms of how much time. So what that leads me to believe is they may have been noting the entirety of their day. So they may have said, I'm teaching synchronously for 3 hours in a day. Well, that's how long they are teaching. They're not just teaching for one course. So some said they're teaching less than an hour. So we've got to be able to delineate that data somehow, and hopefully we can do that as we dig deeper. But that's going to impact what we see here. 2 to 3 hours was a 61%, which is great. That's what we're expecting on Wednesdays, again, similar to Warren. And if you see the parents, again, we're having, for the most part, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours for our students of synchronous instruction, which is exactly where we want our kids to be. In terms of the asynchronous piece on Wednesdays, it fits right in with what our expectations are. Again, for the most part, 1 to 2 hours of that asynchronous instruction. If we have kids that are receiving 3 hours and then 2 hours on top of that, that's 5 hours of work on that Wednesday. That is what we feel is appropriate for our students. On a normal school day, if they were in school, they'd be taking a break for lunch. They'd have a recess. They wouldn't be sitting and doing work and completing tasks for an entire school day. So 5 hours is pretty great, anywhere between that. So in terms of what parents are saying, they're basically agreeing with the teachers for the most part, although some 32% are saying they're getting less than 1 hour. So we will have to take a look at that. But I think 60% of the folks are saying they're getting 1 to 3 hours of additional asynchronous time. Again, for the asynchronous at-home days, as you can see, the hours increase a little bit. 38% are getting 2 to 3 hours of asynchronous work or giving that work. I want to make sure that I have some notes about specialists here as well. Again, Mindess students are still receiving approximately 1 hour to 2 hours of synchronous time here during the asynchronous days. So that's important to note. There's still synchronous instruction happening during these days for our elementary students at Mindess because they are participating in live social studies and science courses, and our specialists are teaching live synchronous lessons all day during this time. So on top of this asynchronous work, we know that our kids are really engaged because they're getting that additional synchronous instruction. And you can see with parents, again, over 50% of students are getting between 2 and 4 hours combined. With the middle school, this is where things cause us to stop and question a bit, because we got to see how exactly teachers were answering this question. Were they answering it based on their entire day, or were they just looking at what they do for one particular course? With 24% of teachers saying that they give 1 to 2 hours, it leads me to believe that several of the teachers may have just been thinking about based on one child what they give. And I think we have to look a little deeper into that information. But there is 50% of folks that are saying 2 to 3 hours on Wednesdays, which is exactly where we want to be. And our students are also right there. 38% plus 14%, that's a pretty good number. That's just about 50% of our population is receiving 2 to 4 hours of synchronous on Wednesdays. Again, for the asynchronous, I bring you back to the comment that I made on the previous slide regarding whether or not folks were talking about just one class or the entirety of their day. But if a child is taking 3 courses, it would make sense if they got about 45 minutes of work for each of those courses. That's going to give them just under 3 hours of work. So if a teacher is saying that they're giving less than 1 hour, that makes sense to me. 1 to 2 hours makes sense as well. What doesn't necessarily match up here is the parents saying that almost 50% of our kids are only getting 1 to 2 hours of that work. So we've got a little bit of work to do and some questions to ask there. Again, the same thing for the at-home days. If a teacher is giving 1 to 2 hours, this is 3 teachers. If each of those teachers is giving 90 minutes, that's 4.5 hours of asynchronous work. So that's what we would expect to see, but we're not necessarily seeing that from the parents. We're seeing 2 to 3 hours at 32%, 1 to 2 at 18%. Only 14% of our parent population is saying 4 to 5 hours. So we definitely have to see where we are with in terms of the minutes for the middle school. Ashland High School, similar to the middle school, it's all dependent upon how the teachers were filling this out, but our live remote instruction, our synchronous instruction, you see is 52% are giving at least 1 to 2 hours. And the students, for the most part, are getting 1 to 3 hours. That's about over 60% of the population is getting 1 to 3 hours. In terms of the asynchronous piece on Wednesdays, less than 1 hour. That again, that makes a certain amount of sense. If the child is taking 3 courses and they're getting just about 45 minutes worth of work from each of those teachers, that's still going to be pretty equivalent to a good chunk of a school day on top of the 3 hours of synchronous instruction they were getting. So we're okay with that, and it matches up a little bit better for the parents saying that their students, for the most part, are getting 1 to 3 hours of work asynchronously on Wednesday. For the at-home days, again, same data, not a surprise, exactly what we want to see. 71% of the teachers are giving 1 to 2 hours of asynchronous work. And then when you really take a look at this crazy pie chart on the left here, or maybe it's on the right of your screen, but the asynchronous at-home days for parents, it's kind of all over the place. But for the most part, if you look at it, folks are getting a good amount of work. 2 to 3 hours is 25%, 4 to 5 is 16.8, greater than 5 is 14, 3 to 4 is 12.4. I think adding that all up, our students are getting a good amount of asynchronous time from their high school teachers. So the last part of the survey for the teachers was 3 more questions that we asked regarding perceptions of how students were participating. And again, this is causing us to ask further questions because the data doesn't necessarily exactly match up. And you'll see what I mean as we move forward. But what % of students are completing asynchronous assignments in a way that reflects thoughtful engagement with the material? What % of students seem to be rushing through doing the bare minimum on their asynchronous assignments? And what % of students are not completing any of the asynchronous work? At Warren, The percent of students who are completing the asynchronous assignments in a way that reflect thoughtful engagement. 33% of our teachers are saying that 75% of our students or higher are being thoughtful and engaging, but 41.7% are saying 50%. So we've got over 70% of our students that are, 70% of our teachers are saying that 50% or more of the students are actively engaged and completing their asynchronous assignments in a way that's thoughtful. In terms of Mindess, again, it's a great percentage. 52% of our teachers believe that 75% of their students or more are engaging, and 43% believe that 50% are engaging. So that's a great number. That's nearly over 90% of our students, 90% of our teachers believe that 50% of or higher of our students are fully engaged in their asynchronous work. To the middle school, similar to the data we just saw at Mindess, nearly 80% of our teachers are saying that 50% or more of our students are engaged. At the high school, the numbers are even better. 67% of our teachers are saying that 75% or more of the students are fully engaged. 6% of the teachers are saying that 100% are fully engaged. So the teachers are clearly happy with the work the students are doing at the high school in terms of their asynchronous engagement. What students are rushing through. This is where the data is not necessarily matching up. So we just said that folks are being thoughtful and engaging. So you would think that these numbers would be a little bit less, but we do have 30% of our teachers think that 50% of the students at Warren are rushing through the assignments. So we've got to take a look at that. At Mindess, we've got about 23% of our teachers who are saying 50% of the students are rushing through. Only 14 are saying 75, but we do want to make sure we're taking a look at that 23% of students and 14% of students who are not necessarily putting forth the efforts that our teachers would expect. And figure out why and what it is and what's making them rush through. Again, at the middle school, 27% of the teachers are saying that 50% of students are rushing through, and just under 20% are saying 75% are rushing. At the high school, this is where the data really kind of gets a little bit confusing. They listed their students being so highly engaged, yet 25% of our teachers are saying 50% of the students are rushing through, which begs the question, are they performing tasks well and engaging, but still rushing? Or are we misinterpreting how well they're doing? But I think it's important for us to take this data and ask some more questions of our staff. Last question, what percent of students are not completing any asynchronous work or most of it? Good to see that 62% of our staff at Warren are saying it's less than 25%. So the majority of our students are completing work, which is great. At Mindess, it's 85% are saying it's less than 25%. Great to see that a good majority of our students are completing work. At the middle school, it's again, the numbers are still looking pretty good. 68% of our staff say it's less than 25%, and even better at the high school, where 95% or 96% of our staff are saying that less than 25% of the students are finishing up their work. I'll stop sharing the screen here. Obviously, there's more data that we need to get from our schools to dig in a little bit deeper to learn more. But this was just a quick well, not a very quick overview, it was a lot of slides, but just an overview of what we've learned so far. For the most part, I think that we're doing okay. Our students are participating. Our teachers are providing a good amount of asynchronous work to go along with the synchronous instruction the students are getting on Wednesdays. But we do have to ask a little bit more to find out exactly what's happening. And one of the things that we plan on doing is digging a little deeper into the parent data. So if a parent is saying their particular student is getting 1 to 2 hours of work synchronously on Wednesday, how much work are they reporting that their child is getting asynchronously?
When you have complex projects like this, they become a part of the team, and that's sort of the key benefit of having CM.
And that sounds like a CM at risk conversation there. It's pretty good. They're talking about the Mindess building. That's
they are.
Sure.
Yeah.
So back to what I was saying about those parents.
Part of that.
We want to dig in to see if the asynchronous work plus the synchronous work on Wednesdays is matching up to reach about a 4 or 5 hour day for our students. And I think we can take a deeper dive and look at that data and present that at a later date.
So I know there'll be questions for myself, Mike, et cetera, but I also want Kathy Silva to weigh in. I think as we thought about Wednesdays, and really that's been one of the concerns. Remember, we have a high percentage of our population that needs specialized services, and we have IEP meetings and 504 meetings, and in trying to design a schedule that allows for those meetings not to interrupt during the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday as much as possible, because we're having limited in-person teaching, that we can at least have those meetings outside of that time frame in the afternoons, in that time frame after the synchronous teaching on Wednesdays. So I just want to have Kathy just give her a little brief synopsis of some things that are happening, like something that may have happened today, or as an example. So.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't anticipating talking, so I can tell you that the data I have is either looking at my calendar right now today,
right,
and also what the intent, as Mr. Adams had said, with regard to our time on Wednesdays. Wednesdays become incredibly invaluable for our special education staff, in part because it offers them a huge chunk of time to deliver remote services to students that they could not get to during the Monday, Tuesday cohort days, the Thursday, Friday cohort days, or even for those students who are 4 days and have a lot of specialized services. So many of the specialists, so that would be OT, CODAs, speech pathologists, our speech assistant, our PT, our counselors, are all delivering services on Wednesdays. And in addition, we have our IEP meetings. One of the things that we did learn, that we were actually pleased to learn in the forced closure from March to June, was that virtual team meetings, or team meetings that were held on a Google or Zoom platform, actually worked very well. So we've continued to use Wednesday as an opportunity to have virtual team meetings, which again does not disrupt the in-person learning that we've been able to have Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So that remote Wednesday actually is fully utilized in the special ed department for both service delivery, for IEP team meetings, and certainly also for collaboration and consultation amongst the team. So there's a lot of times where team members are, kind of doing that consultation together about a particular student or situation, so that they can be working as a really well-functioning team. Does that help in terms of providing some information? I can certainly tell you today there were about 7 team meetings that occurred across the district and at each of the buildings. And in addition, there were other specialized meetings that did occur as well in 2 of the buildings.
And it's important to note, this includes pulling in content area teachers
yes.
for these meetings, right? So
you have to have them. It's part of the regulation.
Right. So I'm just trying to make the point that when we're looking at the length of the day and how much synchronous learning on those days, this is an opportunity for us to pull in the core content teachers into those meetings, which is required.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Graham today,
Right.
and he was incredibly helpful for my team.
Thank you.
Just as a clarifying question on that, Jim and Kathy. So I guess my understanding from what you're saying is that if we were in our normal times a year ago from today, those types of team meetings would have been conducted during the school day and would have pulled kids and staff and others from their normal activities in the classroom. But because we have such limited time in the classroom under this current model, it's better not to disrupt that. And then you have these types of meetings on Wednesday afternoons is an effective tool to maximize the amount of time kids are in classes.
Yeah, that was certainly one of the things we talked about with this schedule, is to be able to utilize those Wednesdays as the days where we're not pulling our staff in order to effectively have those team meetings. It's not always going to work because parents may decide or request a different time frame to have their meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the whole idea of that planning block, if you will, that 4-hour time period after the synchronous learning, is to be able to have some flexibility with our families and our staff.
Actually, Pitaway has been incredibly successful in being able to hold the vast majority of their meetings on the Wednesday so that it doesn't disrupt the in-person learning. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Adams. The ability of scheduling all of the teams on a Wednesday is impossible. We have just too many teams and too many students. But it does offer that, benefit of really not pulling somebody from that in-person learning. And to your point, Mr. Terry, it absolutely is true that when you've reduced how much in-person time a student has, you want every minute to be valued and you hate to disrupt it. So it does offer us that chance.
Okay. Any questions for Mike on the presentation or for Kathy?
And just one comment, if I could, Lori, on the presentation from Mike. More than anything else, Mike, I just want to thank you for the analysis that went along with it. I had certainly reviewed the slides and was left scratching my head in a few places, and those places are exactly the points you touched on. So I really appreciate you kind of pointing out where the data might be based on a different perspective, parent for staff, and certainly also just the explanation when you do a little bit more digging on some of the things that really don't seem to add up, because they didn't to me. Where you could have the numbers didn't add up when we were talking about those last few slides of how many people are engaged in thoughtful work as opposed to those who are just rushing through it. Seems like we had 150% of all students, and I'm pretty sure that doesn't work. So I just wanted to thank you for sort of adding a little, shedding a little light on the presentation of what the data showed so far.
Yeah, and thanks to Mike and Jim for letting me play with the background data. I think what was interesting to me in just being able to play with it in a more fluid manner probably than Mike and Jim, what's been done thus far, and it's part of that deep dive, is really that core specialist split as far as the lack of engagement metrics. And that's where you really see it's the specialist saying that they're the kids not doing either meaningful work or the kids not fully participating. It's really in the specialist, it's not in the core. And it's that distinction, especially at the lower grades. And as a parent, I can understand that if I'm having to focus my precious time, where am I going to focus it, right? I would focus it on the math and reading and literacy pieces. I wouldn't focus necessarily on art. And so to me, that made it feel a little better when looking at the high level number. It was a little more worrisome when I dug into it a little bit than knowing that it was really the specialists. Made that a little bit more palatable.
So Erin, if you've disaggregated that for us, how about ship it
there.
over? Because Mike,
Yeah.
because Mike and I were actually talking about that tonight, how we go about breaking out those individualized questions and how people, the respondents, right? And
Yeah.
so ship us that. That'd be great. That might save us a couple hours of work.
It absolutely will. Like here, for example, like just so wait, hold on one second. I need to actually share a screen too. Share. Okay, let me know when you guys can see. Can you see?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the percentage of students completing assignments in a way that reflects thoughtful engagement. If you look core versus specialist and you see the 50% or higher or the 75% or higher here, that's much higher. I guess that's probably the wrong question to target. Rushing through, doing bare minimum. So if you're looking at the 50% or higher, who's doing the bare minimum? It's the specialist. It's 33% at the middle school. It's 50% of the specialists at Mindess. It's 75% of the specialists at Warren. So that was really interesting. And then from a parent-teacher perspective, putting the parent answer, which is in gray, next to the teacher answer for that same question, that same data point. So this was the asynchronous at home, not asynchronous Wednesday. So we had essentially 3 questions, right? Asynchronous Wednesdays, synchronous Wednesdays, and asynchronous at home, your non-cohort days. And so being able to flip these between what synchronous Wednesdays look like and what I did as far as the numbers, you know, we were asking a question, don't knows don't get counted. And this was the max of the hour span. So if you said it was 1 to 2 hours, you got it, we're counting that as 2 hours. Less than 1 hour is counted as 1. So that's how I'm getting a numerical value here. But seeing the difference between the teachers and the parents in their answers as far as the average time. So yeah, Jim, I will ship this over to you, and then happy to be a pro bono data analytics.
Perfect. Great.
service
No,
for
thank you.
guys.
Yep, that'd be great.
Data analyst. Thank you
Yep.
so much, Erin.
Thanks, Erin.
That'd be
And
helpful.
for Mike and Jim, I know you guys said that you needed to dig a little deeper on some of these things. So are you thinking another survey, or how are you going to get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, there are probably a couple routes. One is I've actually shared this data with the AEA as well, right? So Michelle has the data, and we'll get together. And it was important for her to make sure that we surveyed the staff as well as the families to see what perceptions occur between the two, and are there discrepancies? And you know, Erin just showed that screen. There are certainly discrepancies, right, in what people are thinking. So that's the first thing, is to break it down by building a little more deeply. I certainly think we have to continue our conversations about Wednesdays. And again, like I said at the beginning, we just started second quarter at the middle school and the high school. So students are just meeting their teachers for the first time all over again. It's like a brand new year. But as we get through that January 28th period, where we said we asked folks to commit to remote or hybrid for that period of time, as we get to January 28th, we want to make sure we have a plan moving forward. What is, you know, are we comfortable with where we are? Do we need to make some tweaks? And what do those tweaks look like? And that includes having conversations with our faculty and staff to do that. So I would certainly anticipate another survey at the end of the quarter. But I think we want to get a little more insight into what's happening at each building base level first. Mike, would you agree to that component?
Yes, you said exactly what I would have said, and I think it's based on what we talked about earlier. So
yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I was talking to Mr. Terry earlier in the last couple of times. I mean, I come home and I've got my own child who's in the same exact hybrid schedule as we have, and it's a very different model on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. He is done by 11, and that's actually scheduled that way every one of those days. So it's very interesting, you know, how we approach it. So.
I had a quick, how are you, how do you measure how they're rushing through their work? Like how do they measure that?
I would anticipate and infer, Kathy, that they're seeing what type of assignments the students are passing in.
Yeah,
So
and they're
if-
incomplete or something,
Yeah,
or
incomplete or not doing their best work, or
yeah, okay.
passing in something that's done sloppily.
Yeah,
I'm saying they could also compare it to how they're performing when they're actually in person, right?
Mhm.
So let's assume you're on a Monday and Mr. Graham, I'll use him because Kathy mentioned him. So Mr. Graham assigned something on Monday for his the Monday, Tuesday cohort. He sees the work they're producing on Tuesday, but then he's got his asynchronous component the rest of the week, and he's assigning something that he expects of a high quality. Well, maybe they're not putting in the same effort, right? So he can gauge the two by
Mhm.
assessing the two pieces of work. And that's again, it's perception.
Yeah.
That they're just not putting in that amount of time.
yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, we can move on, but thank you for that information and for that work, and for Erin, for you as well, and for anybody who will be following up to provide us with some more insight to all of this. And we can move on to superintendent goals.
Yeah. So again, this was just the second opportunity. I after our last meeting allowed folks to give me feedback to adjust my goals. Receiving none with other than the comments that were made at the last meeting. I'm just looking for you to approve them so I can formalize them and go from there.
Any final comments? I mean, just to remind the public, anybody who's watching, we do the superintendent goals every year. That is the tool by which we measure the superintendent's performance. We set goals for the district and for the superintendent, and the discussion last week really was just mostly centered around the communication goal and how it should look and what it should say and whether it should be there and so forth. So Mr. Adams took that input and he provided us with a final draft. There was no objection to that, at least prior to today. So last chance to give your input, and if you don't have any, somebody can make a motion.
Move to approve the superintendent's goals for the 2020-21 school year as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor, Erin Williams? Kathy Bates?
Aye.
Aye.
Mhm. Mark Terry?
Aye.
And aye for me as well. That passes. Thank you.
I don't get to say aye?
I thought you did. Sorry, Paul. You approve of the superintendent's goals?
No, I think we need to throw in a few more things. I don't think he's got enough on his plate.
Thank you.
We're turning the corner on COVID. We should be all set in a couple weeks. So.
Yeah. Good one, Jim. MASC delegate meeting that Mark attended on our behalf. Thank you, Mark, and reporting back.
Yes, I just wanted to give a brief report on the action that the delegate assembly took on the 10 resolutions, I think it was. Yeah, 10. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just kind of hit the title. The first one on sort of putting a moratorium on MCAS testing, not surprisingly passed without much dispute. I'm looking for more state funding as well, passed. Anti-racism passed. There was a lot of discussion on, remember there was a resolution to adopt legislation at the state level that would allow us to have a lower voting age for municipal elections. And there actually was a lot of discussion on that. It ultimately passed by a 65 to 49 vote with 4 abstentions. That was one that our committee, I think, we voted against, and I stayed true to the direction the school committee took on all of these motions, but wanted to let people know that one went in a different direction than we had supported, for whatever that's worth. The fifth one was
say that one's interesting because if you let them vote, you also have to let them run for the office, right? So you got to have a 60.
not necessarily. I think you have to be 18 to run, but either way.
Yeah, I thought it was you had to be a voting age or whatever, but
I don't know. But
Interesting to
that's,
be able to vote for it, not to run for it, but.
President's 35, so I'm sure there's ways to
yeah, it's
keep an
federal, that's
18-year-old
federal.
out from being selectman.
We also have this question about funding for schools generally, and if you recall, we wanted an amendment to the language that didn't focus on progressive taxes as the basis for it, but just sought additional funding. There actually was another school district, Framingham, that had submitted a similar amendment. That amendment did pass, as did the amended resolution as a whole. So made law along with Framingham. Number 6 was just retention of Medicaid revenue at the school level. That passed easily. Restrictions on directing funding to private schools passed easily. Membership of a school committee on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education passed easily. Looking for changes in legislation around equity and identification of sexual orientation, LGBTQ rights, etc., passed easily. The last one, number 10, was related to attendance and the impact of poor attendance on accountability standards. As the discussion began, it became quite clear there was a lot of confusion about the wording of this, what it meant, and ultimately that resolution was tabled by a significant margin, by my notes, 71 to 34, so no action was taken on that. And that is what occurred at the Delegate Assembly.
Thank you, Mark. Any
Thanks,
questions?
Mark. Thanks for
Appreciate you
doing that.
that, Mark.
Yes.
And sounds like it, for the most part, we're pleased with the resolution.
Yep. We'll hopefully see what action, if any, AMASC can accomplish on those points.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next, we have the school calendar.
Sure, I'm going to share my screen with you with the calendar. I apologize that the committee did not get an opportunity to see this really that far in advance, but I'll explain partly because the calendar for next year needed to be looked at from a negotiation standpoint as well in terms of some language. So I'll share that with you in a second. The way our contract reads is that the school week or the school year can begin the Monday before, which is the 30th of August, right before Labor Day. But because of the nature of this year, if we had begun on Monday, the 30th, I'm going to scroll down. If you remember back in the summer, Massachusetts passed Juneteenth as an official holiday, which next year is on the 22nd, is on the 19th. So we would observe it on the 20th. That would have been our final day of school, the 20th. So we would have moved it out to the 21st because of the holiday. So I went back to the association and said, hey, how would you consider, let's moving the start date for teachers, the professional development component, to the week earlier, as we did this year to build in the days for the 10 professional development days. And they agreed to a 1-year change in this language that allows us to bring in our staff. The new teachers will be the 25th. The regular staff, professional staff, will come in the 26th and 27th for professional development. And then on the 30th, that Monday, will be the first day of school for students. And it gives us some flexibility and benefits. Typically, we would have 2 days of school and then a break. We'd have the Friday off and the Monday off for Labor Day. But because Rosh Hashanah this year happens to be on the 6th, 7th, the 7th is also a holiday. So I thought, hey, let's move this so we get 4 days of learning still in. And then you end up having, in essence, a 5-day weekend because of the way the contract reads, Labor Day and Rosh Hashanah. And the AEA agreed to that for the year. So what, in essence, it puts us at finishing 180 days on the 16th of June, assuming no snow days. Otherwise, we'd finish on the 24th. So it still finishes up within this week. Otherwise, we could have potentially gone into the last week of June with snow days, et cetera. And also remember, the school committee passed 2 years ago that we, in we'll be recognizing Diwali as well as an official holiday. And that occurs this year as well, where it will be impacting, move my screen, the 4th of November. So we had to factor that into our number of days. So that's how it looks for the calendar for school year 22. And the only other change I think you'll notice is, and it was part of the bargained contract, is that all early releases for teacher-parent-teacher conferences, and it should read actually pre-K through 5. Sorry, Sarah, we always mess that up. Is that it's before lunch conference, where it used to vacillate between before lunch and after lunch, but it's all before lunch now. So the only thing I will mention, and Aaron, because I know it's always on top of your mind as well, but it's an action item, and we can always adjust this calendar, but I've left it because we haven't dealt with it yet, and it's not on the calendar or the agenda for tonight, is the 11th of October. Okay, so that is still part of the action items. I don't want you to think it wasn't modified or adjusted. It's just we haven't discussed that yet and passed anything. So in order for me to get the calendar out, this is what it looks like.
I appreciate you even bringing it up. Thank you.
Yep, no worries. So questions on the calendar?
Yeah, Jim, I mean, I guess my biggest concern is, and I honestly, I don't have a solution to this.
Yep.
Is the idea of having a holiday in the last week of school in June. And I don't mean any disrespect to the recognition of the Juneteenth holiday at all, but I think my personal opinion, at least as a parent, is that the amount of teaching and learning going on in the last few days of any school year is somewhat limited. Things are coming to a close, and then the idea of having, in theory, right, if we had 2 snow days, I think, or maybe even just, if we had 2, our last school day is going to be the 21st of June, which will be a day after a holiday. And I don't know what to do with that. It just feels very choppy and disruptive to the end of the school year.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I'm sure you're probably looking at it the same way.
Well,
I don't know what to do with it.
well, that's when it was, Mark.
Yeah.
It was that day. It was the 21st. So,
Right, so,
I
yeah.
adjusted it because of that, and to finish on the 16th. We don't have a choice, right? I mean, it's a state mandated holiday, and so it has to be recognized on the 20th because it's a Monday, because the holidays.
Yeah, right. I think that there are 2 things. Well, there are a couple of things we could think about, and I'm not suggesting we need to do this tonight, but I think there are things that we can think about. One is, do we get to a point of where snow days become remote days in the future, right? Which means it's not going to be a problem at all under this scenario. I don't know if the state's going to allow that ultimately. So that's one thing. The other is, are there places earlier in the year that you cut out to avoid the problem with snow days? Because right now it works fine as long as we don't have snow days. We only have 1. But if it's so, like I said, I don't have an answer to it. It's just,
But I guess my question to you, Mark, is if we had 2 snow days and that wasn't a state holiday, we would be ending on a Monday after 2 days off of school.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get rid of weekends, right? So.
Yeah.
No, and honestly, Paul, I think there have been times when the school calendar has ended prior to snow days on a Monday, and I've always looked at it and just said,
right,
kind of like, well, that's kind of crazy, but so we almost always have at least 1 or 2 snow days, right? So you're right, Paul. It's not to say that the normal process isn't without its potential flaws. This one, the idea of long weekend, right? In this case, the calendar comes out, so it's a Monday. You end up with a holiday. It is what it is. Like, I mean, I don't know that I have an answer to it. I just
the only solution, and I'm speaking going back, 7 years now, is that we recognize none of the religious observances, right? And I don't believe this community, in the surveys I've done as superintendent about our religious observances, would not want to see those days go away.
Yep.
And that's been made very clear to me within the surveys I've put out to the community, and they have been valued and treasured within this community for years.
Yep.
And if we have those conversations, I mean, it's 3 days, right? It's 3 additional days that we would remove that back to the 13th.
Right. Yeah, and I thought about when I looked at this earlier today and had the exact same feeling.
Yeah.
I honestly think that the one other option that's there, and it's a much more significant shift, is we do away with the April vacation, go to a March vacation. But I think that's a really big issue, and I don't know, if we would want to do that.
Right.
We have data on that, right, Jim?
Yeah, we do, and that was
shot
a
down very
negative as well.
Yeah.
No.
No,
Yeah.
I think the thing to do is do this and see how it works, and
Sure.
hopefully, excuse me, not have the snow days, or get serious about legitimate remote learning.
Right.
Now that we've been playing around with that for a little while, and be able to hopefully do that on a snow day basis. To me, like, that probably is the best answer, but I don't know that state's going to allow that after this COVID thing is over.
I will give you the insight as of even today. I mean, the answer is no. They're not even considering that as an option. So.
I've said my piece.
Yep.
So Jim, just one
Yeah.
thing on the calendars in general, I think we might want to look at is putting some kind of coloring on the 185th day.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many people are like, but I've scheduled to leave.
Right. Fair enough.
Listen, you cannot schedule it because we have to schedule out 185 days.
Right. Okay.
So having that more highlighted, saying, hey, don't schedule any vacations till after this date, right?
Yes, I will make sure that gets done tomorrow before we publish it. Yep.
I wanted to say one thing about the Juneteenth now that it's a state observed holiday.
Yep.
And I get where Mark is coming from, and I know even last summer I remember people taking off, and just like you'd see people's pictures at the beach and whatnot when it was a school day, and people are going to choose whatever they're going to choose, right? And it's not like we could do it, but knowing that Juneteenth is now at the end of our school day, the true meaning of the state celebrating the holiday is that so we know about it, and so our children know about it, and we take it more seriously. Juneteenth is something I think that's come into our nomenclature and into the collective consciousness only in the last couple of years. It was never something we were taught in school, and it was never something that we ever celebrated, at least in Ashland when I was growing up. So if we take the intent of what the holiday is supposed to do and make sure that it's part of the curriculum, then I think we're less likely to try to be like, oh, let's maneuver these snow days and do remote and whatnot. We don't want to take away from the meaning of what this is, and we want to make sure that so I think as long as kids are getting the meaning of that day prior to the end of school, whether we end up celebrating or not, whether the kids end up in school for that one day after a 3-day weekend, whatever, I think that should be our primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes
Love
sense.
that idea, Aaron.
Yep. And I think with our curriculum instruction person on, I think listening to this, we'll make sure that happens.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything else on the calendar or a motion?
Move to approve the calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Don't jump.
Paul Kendall,
Aye.
Chair Williams,
I, under fear of harm from my spouse who hates this calendar. Sorry, Jim.
Mark Terry.
Can't do
Aye.
anything I can do about it. I just
Kathy,
put the dates in where they fall.
Kathy, did you say yes?
No, because I didn't hear you. Yes.
Oh, sorry. An aye for me as well.
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you.
Kathy, do you have any warrant approvals?
I do, yes. Between October 15th, 2020 and November 18th, 2020, I, Kathleen Bates, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $720,117.82. This includes general fund expenses of $471,115.23, revolving expenses of $58,265.27, and grant expenses of $190,737.32. I also signed off on $1,087,311.65 of payroll.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And then moving on to the minutes, October 23rd, October 28th, October 30th. We'll start with the 23rd. Any issues there? No?
None.
Do you want to vote them all at the same time, or let's just vote as we go along? Do we have a motion to accept those minutes of the 23rd?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Paul?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me. Are there any issues on the 28th minutes?
I didn't have any.
Seeing none, do we have a motion to accept the minutes of October 28th?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Kathy?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
An aye for me as well. And then the minutes of October 30th. Any issues there?
I didn't have any.
And seeing none, I'll take a motion for approval of the October 30th minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
An aye for me as well. Do we have any gifts or donations this evening? Jim?
We do. Yep. Ohio Pile Prints, $52.24 to miscellaneous gifts and donations. The Special Olympics of Massachusetts, $500 for a stipend for a unified sports coach. Thank you, Kathy Silva, for organizing that. Planet Aid, collection bins, $800.59 to miscellaneous gifts and donations for a total of $1,352.83.
Excellent. Motion to accept the gifts and donations.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
In favor? Kathy?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me as well. Do we have any additional report from the Assistant Superintendent?
Not tonight. You've heard enough from me today.
Thanks, Mike. What about member updates? Anybody?
I'll provide one. I'm kind of sheepish about sharing these kind of things, but one of the other things that happened at the delegate assembly is I was awarded lifetime membership in the MASC.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Kind of,
Mark, that's awesome.
it based on part of my work stuff and being involved in the Council of School Attorneys for years, and then obviously being on this committee for the last 5+. But that was a nice recognition, came out of the blue to me when I heard about it in September, August. Oops, just my computer. So just sharing that.
Wow,
Nice.
that's great news.
That is great. Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
We're so proud.
Yeah, and he represents us. Yay.
I think it maybe I get into the conference for free now, so yeah, so save us some money too. Thanks, Jim. I like the clapping.
Yeah, that's cute.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Any building updates, Paul?
We're moving things along. Tomorrow evening, if anybody doesn't know, we have a community forum tomorrow. So encourage everybody to come at 7 o'clock. The meeting agenda is posted. You can also find it posted all over the place, but we'll be we've added some slides, particularly around cost and sustainability and things like that. So encourage everybody that has any questions to come there. And then, after this community forum, we'll probably start doing some, I guess, road shows for whatever want to call them, where you would be normally maybe having people host small gatherings in their houses and things like that. We obviously can't do that, so we'll do them via Zoom or some other, protocol safe method. So, yeah, that's about it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We're in the middle of submitting an application for utilizing Chapter 149A. That's the construction manager at risk method for the building project. And anything else, Jim? I'm trying to think.
Paul, just can I ask you a question about the forum tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what kind of input is going to be? Is it an opportunity for the community to provide input, or is it really more an opportunity for the committee to update the community on where things are?
I mean, it's always a bit of both. Right now the schematic design is set, right? It's been submitted and approved by the MSBA. So if you think of it from a box perspective, right? The building isn't going to get any bigger. It's going to be about where it sits, the layout, everything's about going to be the same. So there's not a lot of input around, hey, no, I really think the building should be on the other side of the property. We're not doing anything like that. But we're always looking for feedback, and it's primarily a good opportunity for them to learn more about the project and ask more concrete questions, right? I have pricing, I have cost information for taxpayers, right? The slides will describe exactly how to figure out what the tax impact for an individual property owner is. Things like that, and any questions around that, sustainability. We're in the process of trying to take the vast amounts of information we have and take them from the community forums kind of presentations that can be anywhere from 30 to 50 slides long, and be able to make that more consumable. Like we have some sustainability slides that are actually just 2 or 3 slides, but kind of speak to those things. And so, but we have more information to share, and so it's a good opportunity to ask questions and get a good feel for the project. So,
do you think there'd be information? I mean, is it something that you think that we, if we can, should watch, or is it kind of repeat of what we've largely heard already?
I mean, there's some new content. Like I said, we've worked on some of the content, but after like I said, this community forum, after that, we're gonna really start hitting the more discrete and having smaller road shows, if you will. That won't be formal building committee meetings, but more, hey, if somebody wants to have Jim, Mike, and I, get on a Zoom with them and some of their neighbors or a small group and go through and ask discrete questions and hone in on what's important to them, we'll do that. We'll probably bring it up here in our meetings and have another smaller conversation around the thing. I don't want to re-go over everything we've already done, but what are the financials? What does that look like? And start to get that information out there, because it's difficult, I think, for a lot of people. Everybody wants the finances to be simple, but municipal finance is never simple. And so I've worked with Michael to try to figure out simpler ways to make it meaningful to people. So I encourage everybody to come, but it's not like, hey, if you miss this community forum, you're out of luck. We'll probably have another one, but we'll also be opening it up for people to schedule smaller groups to ask questions. Because quite frankly, a lot of people aren't even comfortable in a community forum like that asking their questions, right? So we'll give them the opportunity to have smaller, close to one-on-one time with the group to be able to ask those questions.
Thanks. I just have one quick logistical on timing on town meeting vote and ballot question.
Right. So
we know
the ballot date has not been set, but it's likely going to be within the 2 weeks after the town meeting. And so the current, and I think we mentioned this before, so the current thought is on December 8th, there will be our normal special town meeting. Remember, our fall town meetings are always special town meetings, the annual ones in the spring. So that one will contain all the warrant and topics that are non-building project related. And then on January 9th, so that's a Saturday, there will be another special town meeting that is just for the 2 building projects. And those,
Paul, what day was that? Saturday the 9th?
the 9th, right?
Thanks.
And they're still working out the logistics, but the general gist of it would be that we would make presentations on the projects, answer any questions, and then they would open up the voting and do more of like a roll call vote, allowing people that were watching at home on WACA or anything like that, who didn't feel comfortable coming in and spending a longer period of time inside, to be able to watch, come in, cast their vote and leave, but still get their vote counted. So they're still working out the logistics of all that, but that's kind of, more details will be coming out on that, but that's still the thought process. So it'll be January 9th, and it'll be probably one of the 2 next weeks after that will be the ballot date as well.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
anything else?
I
I don't-
attended the high school site council meeting earlier today. It was nice to, we talked a little bit about the school improvement plan, and really spent the rest of the time just getting some feedback from how the students and teachers are doing under these circumstances. It was really insightful and good to hear from everybody. So that's my
And Larry, I know we talked briefly about this. You want to
Yeah.
just ask the group whether everybody's good with sticking with what we,
continuing our assignments. I was remembering that we usually make the assignments for site councils at our retreat, which we didn't have. So I just continued my role at the high school without us ever having really discussed it. But if everybody's okay with keeping the same assignments that we had before, until we get a time to talk about it more deeply, or if there's something that you would rather change or not do, you can let us know. But that's what I did today. Everybody okay with that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Laura, can we just circulate the list of what we've got, just to make sure we all
We're on
remember
the
from
same page.
last year?
Yeah. Kathy, you still doing the
Ashback?
dash pack?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Mark, I'll try to get my hands on that. If you were attending a site council before and you would like to still attend that site council, I would say reach out to the principal of that building to remind them that you are the current representative until the school committee votes to change that. And as before, we're just liaisons in that group. We're not voting members and not expected to attend every single meeting, go when you can. It's really just an opportunity to provide communication between our group and the other groups in town.
sorry, Lori, one thing, just to go back to the building project real quick.
Sure.
Just to give people updates, there has been some work if people have been driving by or seeing things. There has been some work on the site going on. The wetland scientist and the civil engineer has been out there delineating wetlands, surveying the property and things like that. And they're going to be doing some test pits and borings over the next couple months. That hasn't been scheduled yet. So not to be alarmed if people see that there's some disruptions on the field. They'll excavate it, they'll fill it back in, but where there was grass, it's obviously not going to be grass. They need to take soil samples from different areas and things like that. There'll be some minor tree cutting to get to where the new footprint of the building is, with the equipment to do the test pits and borings and things like that. I'll let the group know when that is scheduled, but if people are seeing activity, I did get somebody reach out asking, they were concerned that trees were going to be cut down because they saw some markings on trees that weren't supposed to be in the area where we're going to be clearing trees, and those were for wetlands delineation, nothing to do with tree removal. So we do have activity going on the site, but they're going to work with Claudia on making sure it's minimally disruptive. But I'll let everybody know when to expect something, so people aren't like, what the heck's going on over there? If you see, you know, some machines digging some holes at some point. So.
Thanks, Paul. And Raheem, are you still with us?
Yes.
Yes, you're there. Okay. I should have said this part at the beginning of the meeting, but you know, it's kind of weird that we're on Zoom, and when our student rep used to attend our meeting, it was probably a little easier to pipe in, but you are welcome to chime in on any topic on our agenda at any point. And there's a lot of us that can be very chatty. So, but certainly do not be shy about just butting in and offering your input. We welcome it anytime, and we really appreciate it. And then at the end, we usually go around and just give some information about what we've been up to, if we've attended meetings or so forth. And sometimes the student rep will share with us at that time what's been going on in school or what's been going on for you. So if you have anything you want to share now, go right ahead. I don't want to put you on the spot, but for the future, when we go around and do that, I will include you in that. So if you want to bring anything back to us that you want us to know or that you just want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. So how's it going?
Everything's going well. A lot of clubs have started to go online. I know that at least 3 clubs that I'm in have moved to online, so that's good. Students are getting that club experience. Besides that, I don't think there's anything else. Some students are still waiting for the MIA decisions for the winter sports. I know that. But besides that, everything's going well.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And please don't hesitate to share with us at any meeting. We welcome your input. We need your input often. That student perspective is really important. So I will then, I guess, ask for a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
Second.
All in favor, Aaron?
Hi.
Kathy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
And I for me as well. Have a good night, everybody. If anybody's watching, we'll be back on Friday morning, as we usually are, every Friday morning, 7:30, to talk about COVID and its impact on our learning plans.
And Mr. Kendall, Ms. Johnson already changed the calendar for you. It's all good to go.
Oh, did we fix the link
colors
on the website?
I don't know about that. She only controls the calendar. I'll check with Ann Canton tomorrow. Thanks.
Night,
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Yeah.
good
Good night.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.